your Jersey connection is you went to your father was stationed at Fort Dix, correct?
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
And you went to Marcus Newcomb Middle School in Pemberton. Yeah.
That's about 23 years ago. 23, 24 years ago.
Right.
And it's amazing because this is the area where I decided I wanted to be a journalist. It was
that young.
Yeah, I was a chunky little kid flipping through the channels. It was they had ABC, CBS, NBC. They had the three major networks back then. And it was something about it. I was watching my dad watch the news and how he was just captivated by what was going on, and the person on the screen was relaying that information. I said, that's what I want to do.
Really?
And so 23, 24 years ago, a lot of kids have different dreams. I want to be this, I want to be that. I was always a journalist.
How old are you now?
30
something?
34 now,
34.
yeah.
Okay.
I usually don't, because they think you're young, and it doesn't really get that, so I usually don't give my age.
Well,
but
I consider 34 very, very young, but I guess it's all perspective, and we don't.
Well, for being a main anchor, a primary anchor in a market like this, and a top market is extremely rare.
Right. So that actually preempted my next question. So that's really when you knew you wanted to be an anchor, and then at what point did you begin your formal education to follow that pursuit? I mean, were you immediately a broadcast journalism major when you went to Pepperdine, correct?
I went to Pepperdine. It started, it was so funny because I think when I was about 13, 14, I became a newspaper delivery boy because I thought that was the closest thing to becoming a journalist. So I delivered newspapers for a while. But when I really pursued my dream was in high school. I went to high school and college at the same time. I was a sophomore in high school, and they had a program called Area Vocational Program. It was like AVP something. They had a connection with a community college that allowed seniors to go to college. And I went to my counselor, and I petitioned and I begged, and I think at one point I cried because I wanted to do both the journalism program at the college and attend high school. And finally I received approval from the principal. And when I graduated with my high school diploma, I actually graduated with my associates.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I knew this is what I want to do. And not just become an anchor. I never had the goal set out to be a main anchor, a primary anchor. I want to sit here and be the big dog. I just had a passion for telling a good story. And that's what really captivated me, is just watching my dad and watching the reaction and how someone can relay the news and tell a good story. It was never the glitz and glamour. Mm-hmm. I always say I'm not your traditional anchor because I don't care. I really don't care about that. When I'm out and people say hello, I mean, it's amazing that they connect and say, oh, that's my news guy. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was never about, I'm going to be on TV or FaceTime. It was about telling a really good story.
And how did you cut your teeth into business? Where was your first job out of college?
It was during, when I was still in high school. And I worked at Fox in Colorado Springs. And they didn't have a news organization at the time, but they were doing this community affairs show called 21 on the Go. And I was working master control, and I was bad at it. Master control is basically the central hub where you air commercials and take in feeds. And I worked a double shift, and I fell asleep during prime time, so we went to black and lost a whole bunch of commercial time. But they were starting up the show, and I heard about it, and I approached the general manager and told him this was a dream of mine, and I wanted to be a correspondent on the show. So they placed me on the show, and I became a host.
And this is what, 16, 17
I was about 16 years old.
Wow.
And it's 21 on the Go. And looking back, I mean, I was, extremely green, but it was a great opportunity for me. I had a chance to travel around the area and do different specials and shows. And so I was working master control, doing this 21 on the Go, going to high school, and attending college at the same time. So that was really my first start as far as broadcast television.
And you maintained a presence in the industry ever since then.
I did. I took a little break, went to Pepperdine University, and then came back, and I worked for Family News and Focus, Dr. James Dobson. And that's when I started writing. And I did Family News and Focus, the radio outlet, so I did radio for a while. But I always missed television. I wanted to get back into television. So I sent the tapes that I had with 21 on the Go, back when I was in high school, to Casper, Wyoming. I actually sent it everywhere. But Casper, Wyoming just happened to call. And Susan Burke was the news director. And she called me and she said, I'd love to meet with you. And so still working at Family News and Focus, doing the radio. And traveled up there, and she offered me the job on the spot. It was a weekend anchor. So Monday through Friday, I would work at Family News and Focus, and then I would hop in my car and drive up, which was I think about a 5-hour drive to Casper, Wyoming, and I would check into a hotel, anchor the weekends. Sunday night, I would drive back and start my work. I was determined.
Yeah.
And it was funny because Susan Burr, Casper, Wyoming, I don't know if you're familiar with,
Oh,
but not a lot of diversity.
I wouldn't.
And the news director told me, she said, we don't have a lot of diversity up here, and you're going to experience some problems. But I want to let you know that.
Mm.
And I didn't care. And I did experience problems.
So really, they were taking a risk, and you...
They were taking a risk because, I mean, she was there for a while, but she told me, I can't recall the last time we had a minority on the air.
Uh-huh.
And for the most part, the community accepted me, but there was a pocket
Right.
that we did receive death threats. And we actually had a code in the building. We titled it Code Black out of all codes, but, because we received flyers and literature with nooses, and so if that group ever came to the station, they would have to say the code over the intercom, and I would have to go hide. That's how it was. Yeah.
Now, did you realize what you were getting into previous to that, or did it hit you while you were doing that there was either these real or perceived threats?
I think that's the first time I realized that race was an issue. I mean, I grew up in a racial household, so it was never an issue. I'm sure it was discussed or it was present, but it was never an issue. So to me, it's just like I never really saw color, I never saw race. It didn't matter to me. But I think at that moment I said, wow, this is real. I don't think I was scared, but it hit me as why wouldn't, I be accepted
Right.
for not, beyond being a journalist, but for the color of my skin. So I think at that point it was another wake-up call. And, growing up, I was called names and stuff like that, the N-word, stuff like that. But I don't think until you're an adult and you're working in a business, you realize, okay, it's real.
Tell me what a day is like in the life of a major market news anchor. How does your day start? What time do you get here? Obviously, you put in long hours because I shut you off at 11 o'clock.
And it seems like I'm there when you wake up. It is. It's very involved. It's beyond. A lot of people think we come in, we sit down, we read. I mean, it's so much more. My day sometimes starts at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, depending on if I have a special story or if I'm covering anything for the day. I always thought, and maybe to backtrack a little bit, I always thought when you reach a larger market, it would get easier. But it's certainly not the case. There's more pressure, and there's certainly a greater responsibility, more work, anchoring 3 shows, and 2 of the shows are an hour-long format. A lot of writing, a lot of proofing, a lot of looking at videos, and community involvement. I mean, it's just beyond what I do here at Fox 29 and working with the writers and the reporters and the producers. It's the involvement out in the community. There's sometimes I'm up at 7 a.m. to go to breakfast, prayer breakfast or community events or speaking engagements. So it is literally wake up at 6 a.m., go to event, community appearance. I'm on 2 boards right now. I have 4 scholarships that I give out. Then I come into work and, deal with the pressures of the day. Try to put on 3 great newscasts, and sometimes I'm out by midnight, 12:30.
Are you married? Do you have a family? Or
no.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I kind of went down that road.
What? You went down that road. What? How's the money for a news anchor? Be as specific as you like.
Money, it really depends on the position.
And actually, probably the success or the rating success of what you're
Absolutely.
able to
I mean, it can vary anywhere. I mean, it certainly 6 figures.
Mm-hmm.
It can vary. You can.
I've heard in some cases 7 figures or more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It depends on contract. We have contract cycles every 2 to 3 years. We sign a contract, and this is a very subjective business. It's beyond the ratings, it's beyond the viewers, which plays a major role, but it's also the news director and the general manager. And if they like you, you're golden. If you have a change, they may want their own people in there.
Right.
But that's part of the business, and you realize what you get into. But I think there's a certain edge to that that allows you to work harder, that motivates you. I know there's 20 people behind me that want my position, especially being this young. And I'm sure there are a lot of older individuals or other minorities or who just, I would love that. That should be. So for me, it allows me to work harder, and it kind of energizes me on a daily basis. I'm extremely blessed, Ken. Extremely blessed to be where I'm at. I never take that for granted. I don't feel entitled. I don't believe any position is owned to any particular person. I'm compensated extremely well, but I also give back. I also take care of my family. So, do I live an extremely lavish lifestyle? No, because that's not me.
Oh, great answer. Tell me a little bit about Fox. Have you always worked for Fox-related stations?
I worked for every network affiliate.
Okay.
ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox.
Do you have any particular political persuasion yourself?
No.
No. Okay.
I think it's a lot of people perceive that you work for Fox. It's just you. It's really not the case. It's really not the case. I'm not persuaded any particular way on my opinion. I've never been told to react a certain way or deliver a story a certain way, ever.
Ever met Bill O'Reilly?
I have.
What do you think of him?
I think he's a great television personality. I really do. With Bill O'Reilly and Glenn Beck, I believe they have a place. But I think that's the great part of the mass media. We don't always have to agree. Just like with local Fox 29, a lot of people associate Fox 29 with the network. It's not the Thomas Drayton Hour. I don't pick all the stories, but I'm glad I don't. There are some stories that we air in the newscast that some people may not agree with. But I believe we have a responsibility to deliver that story. And the same thing with Bill O'Reilly. There are opinions that you may not agree with, that I may not agree with, the public may not agree with, but I think there's a place for it and a certain responsibility. As far as a person, I respect him. I think he's made a name for himself and a brand. Do I agree 100%? Maybe that's not my place,
right,
as a journalist to say that, but I can pick and choose what I watch.
Sure. I've spent some time in newsrooms. I was talking to Cindy about when I retired from pro football. I actually interned at Channel 6 for a while, and unfortunately I didn't have enough name recognition to land a job right away, and I was married with children, and I couldn't afford to move to Ames, Iowa. And
really, right out of sports, you couldn't.
No, I couldn't.
See, now it's the opposite.
I know.
Like,
well, there are a lot more avenues too. I mean, there's a million different stations, but so I am familiar with being around a newsroom and in talking with Jim Gardner and a lot of the other people in the businesses. This can get to you because most news that you're reporting is bad news, and there's a macabre aspect to a lot of what comes in that you have to report.
Sure.
Does that ever get to you?
Absolutely.
Is that a grind? I mean,
absolutely.
Do you develop a thick skin with that and just become?
Some people do. I don't think I ever do. Once again, Ken, I don't think I'm your typical news anchor or reporter. I think I'm extremely emotional in some regard. I remember covering a story, a hidden run, where the family was holding a vigil, and I was by my photographer bawling because I could relate with that father and that family. Homes that have been burned, storm damage. It's so funny, I was thinking about 9/11 last night, and it's just, there are stories that affect me. I mean, on a daily basis. And I think I approach every story with an emotional attachment. I really do. But I think the moment that you become hardened or disconnected, I think it's time to take a break, because I believe the viewer notices that.
Is there any interview or story that stands out in your mind as one that was most interesting, most difficult, most impactful, that you got, anything along those lines that you can come to mind? Any personality that you spoke with that left a
Clinton.
lasting impression?
Bill Clinton was an extremely powerful interview. Just such a captivating individual. Um,
What made him captivating? Just because he was
extremely intelligent.
because he was president, or more?
More. I mean, he was just very open. When you sit down with somebody, you can. I mean, there's a certain wall that the person, I guess, places in front of the interviewer. He was just very open, very candid. There was a rawness and a realness that I appreciated.
What's it like to interview the president of the United States, or a former president? I mean, to me, I think I've been in eyesight of only one president in my entire life, and it's pretty exciting to get that close. What's it like to sit down and talk with somebody?
It is exciting. I've interviewed several presidential hopefuls. You try. I'm trying to phrase this properly. I mean, you try not to get overly excited. I mean, you can't let your emotions show. And oh my God, I'm sitting in front of the president here. What do I ask? And I don't want to seem nervous. And am I sweating? Is my lips sweating? Am I going to ask the right questions? Is the station going to approve? It's a privilege. It is a privilege when you sit down with the president. You want to ask the right questions. You want to ask fair questions, but you also want to ask tough questions. But it really is. It's a privilege.
Anybody else come to mind, or any?
There was a difficult interview, but I don't know if I should say it was with Fox. Someone who, can I say?
We'll edit it.
It was Glenn Beck. No, okay. I'm trying to think.
I feel like as a journalist, you're subjective, you know.
I know.
I mean,
he was a difficult one.
Objective, I meant, not subjective. You have to keep your objectivity.
No, I think, every person brings I think comedians can be difficult.
Why?
I think certain comedians
it's usually
mask.
It's usually an act.
It is an act. Yeah. So they mask. I don't want to say mask emotions or pain or anything that they're going through, but I believe they mask most of who they really are. So I think the more difficult interviews would be comedians, because you're trying to break through and you're trying to understand who they are, and is this an act?
Right.
And sometimes that's difficult to break through. But I mean, politicians are politicians, and you try to weed through the questions and try to get to the core of it. And they have. I think everybody has their agenda. As far as interviews, there hasn't really been a difficult. I'm trying to really think back.
Not necessarily difficult, but interesting or inspiring or anything. I was just wondering if anything ever stood out with you that had an impact. Those can be tough questions, because if someone asked me that question, I wouldn't have had time to prepare, and I'd be searching.
No, I think the more memorable interviews that I've done are with real people. Real people who have real stories. When I look back, it's always exciting to interview the president. It's exciting to interview politicians. It's exciting to interview actors and actresses and those who are in the spotlight. But at the end of the day, it's the mom and the dad and those who are struggling, and the stories that you're trying to tell. Those are the ones that I remember the most. I was talking about the hidden run. That just stayed with me.
You've had some turnover here at Fox. You've Don Tollefson, who was a guy I used to work with at 6, and Carrie Lee Halkett and Bill Vargas. Is that all a product of trying to get better ratings, or what? Because it seems like, to me, perceptually, there has been a little more turnover here at some of the other stations in town. Is there any particular reason for it?
For some of the individuals, they were prior to my arrival here. Billy I had just arrived, so I wasn't aware of what happened with him. Same thing with Tolly. Carrie and its public was a personal decision.
I'm sorry, can I just interrupt for a second? I thought this interview was about his career, and this is off the record. I don't understand why you're asking about station turnover or anything like that.
I won't use it.
Oh, so then you don't need to ask it then,
Right,
right?
right,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, no, we won't.
I think
use it.
you know, it's just I think with any business, it's it's um, it's a business.
Mhm.
I'll just leave it as that.
Okay, no, fair
You
enough.
know, television stations, banks, it's a business,
Hmm.
and that's whatever the reason may be.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, you got to keep the lights on.
Do you have any other professional aspirations? I'm sure you would be quite happy to sit in this chair for the remainder of your career. But if you weren't afforded that opportunity, what would be your dream job? What would you like to go on and do? Would you like to be a network
No,
anchor, network correspondent, work in Europe? Anything that comes
I
to
would
mind?
love to. I would love to work with families in need. That's always been my heart. I mean, I have been afforded an amazing lifestyle being a news anchor, and I have no regrets. I've had an amazing career. I've worked in some amazing places: Alaska, California, Denver, um, and now back home.
Hmm.
And this is it for me.
Hmm.
I told my news director the same thing. We had dinner the other night, and I said whether or not I'm privileged to sit in this chair or not, this is it for me. This is home for me. And would I go to another station or another market or have network aspirations? I don't. And it's weird to say that at this age, but I've been extremely blessed where I've accomplished everything I set out to. I never wanted to be a network anchor. I just wanted to be a good journalist, and I know I'm in it for all the right reasons.
Do you
And
think?
this is a changing business, Ken. I mean, this
Sure.
has changed a lot from when I sat down with my dad when I was a child watching it to what it is today. I'm not saying it's for the worse or better. I'm just saying it's a different business.
Hmm.
And at a certain point, I have to decide if I want to continue for the rest of my life sitting in this chair or if I want to take a break and do something else that I love, which is helping families and developing scholarships and perhaps working for a nonprofit or even just taking a mental break. This is a business that can drain you,
Sure.
that is very challenging, um, that can be extremely stressful.
Hmm.
And I never want to become hardened or bitter or change who I am as a person.
So do you see yourself being a Philadelphian for the rest of your life,
Absolutely.
regardless of your?
Absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to travel.
Sure.
And I love to travel.
Well,
Sometimes
no.
when it gets cold, I love to go down to Puerto Rico for a while and try to warm up. But
And
um,
Northern California is kind of pretty too, where you went to school.
oh, it's absolutely. It's. I was there for 8 years.
Yeah.
It's a great place. And a lot of people, when they come here, they're like, "Oh, Philadelphia or the people." And I'm like, "Don't you love it?
Yeah.
Don't you love it?" I mean, this is a place unlike any other. The people can be tough. They can be very critical. They've been extremely kind to me, so I'm blessed for that. But I love this city. There are some parts of it that, with the blight, and it's not. You got to take it for what it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is it. This is it.
I agree. I'm a Chicago native, and I moved here when I made the Eagles in 1980, and I've stayed. And I think it's one of the most interesting, unique cities between the history, the culture, the passion of the people. I really love it here.
And prior to Philly, I had several choices of where to go, and it was a no-brainer. I mean,
Really?
hands down, yeah.
Good for you. What what would you like people to know about Thomas Drayton that people don't know? I mean, you've already been very enlightening to me about your uh, philanthropy, and is there a side of you that people don't know, or is there anything that you want to add to this interview that you think would enlighten people about who you are and what you do?
I um, I mean, part of me, I want people to look past the. What gets me sometimes is the Fox name. I want people to look past that um, because I believe we do have a lot to offer. I think that's what gets me the most is when I hear so many negative things about Fox and the Fox network, and I don't understand it. I can understand parts of it, but I don't understand the overall picture of why people are so hateful. And
That's interesting, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I guess politically, I would consider myself a conservative, although I'm not hardcore. I mean, but when it comes to Fox and there is a perception of a left bias in the mainstream media, and there is a perception of Fox as being more tilted to the right. To me, when Fox says they are fair and balanced, I truly believe that they are making an effort to be fair and balanced, because the pendulum had swung so far in the other direction perceptually. Whether or not it's true or not, that's the perception.
We have so many different opinions and viewpoints here on the local level, where it's hard not to be fair and balanced. And when we did go through a format change for a while, where it was heavily based on interviews and commentators, I tried my hardest to keep it fair and balanced. And at the end of the interview, try to, okay, here we go, we can disagree, but we both have great viewpoints. And it's difficult. I think it's difficult for the public to see that, because some people have been branded for so long.
And how could Fox change that? How could they?
Well, I think it's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take an opportunity for someone to tune in and say, you know what, let me give it a chance. Let me see what they're about. Put my perceptions aside and really take a good hard look at it. You don't have to love everything we do. I think that's with any news organization. You're not going to love everything that's presented. But as far as me, I'm passionate about what I do. And it's not just a line. I know you hear a lot of people say, well, I'm a passionate journalist. I care, and I really do. I really do. I would stay up for 24 hours if I could do half the events and charity events and to get involved. And I'm out there. I mean, I'm out there within the community, and it's just a wide range of organizations and people. And I want to listen. I want to hear your story. And I can at least say for myself and a lot of journalists and a lot of people we have in the newsroom, we do care. And we do care. A lot of people think we're hardened journalists and we're just trying to sensationalize everything, and if it bleeds, it leads. It's if they only knew a lot of stuff that we don't show them, or we do try to weed out.